A midsummer dawn cracked over the city skyline as Raja, a golden-coated rescue retriever, nestled against the chest of his owner. Aman. On the surface, they were inseparable, a man broken by loss, and a dog broken by abandonment, and, together, they had forged a fragile refuge against a world that seemed determined to crush them both. But when shadows of depression and desperation crept into Amon's thoughts, the balance shifted in an instant. An impulsive act would send Raja plummeting from a dizzying height, shattering the fragile peace they had built. Yet in that fallen moment lay the seed of redemption, the turning point where compassion and hope would collide in ways neither soul could predict. Before we continue, where are you watching from today? Comment below. The city pulsed with the hum of early traffic and distant construction, yet on the 14th floor of a high-rise apartment block, silence reigned, broken only by the soft panting of Raja. He was a survivor of neglect, saved from a rural shelter where emaciation and fear had been his constant companions. When Amon first encountered Raja, the dog's ribs protruded beneath a dull mat of fur, eyes downcast as though he believed the world no longer deserved his trust. It was a chilly November morning when Amon himself, nursing wounds of a more emotional nature, climbed the shelter steps on a whim. In Raja, he saw a reflection of his own loneliness. From that day forward, they became each other's salvation. Each evening, Raja would wait by the door, tail thumping expectantly as Amon returned from a dreary office job. Together they explored city parks, Raja's joyful bounds and eager sniffs, awakening something in Amon's soul, a glimmer of purpose and a warmth that had long since faded. There were no grand gestures at first, just the way Raja leaned into Amon's knee as he sat on park benches. The quiet way his gaze tracked Amon's movements in the apartment, as if to say, "I'm here, and I trust you." Over months, a routine built itself around their companionship. Amon's days became anchored by Raja's needs, mealtimes punctuated by eager barks, evening walks that stretched longer into amber sunsets, and shared repose on the worn couch where Raja would rest, his head on Amon's lap. Neighbors commented on the transformation. The man who once shuffled through corridors with shoulders bowed by anxiety now strode through hallways with a steadiness they had rarely seen, and Raja, once skittish of human touch, now greeted strangers with a tentative wag, his eyes bright and alive. But beneath the surface of this blossoming bond, Amon carried hidden burdens, a past trauma one too painful to voice gnawed at him daily. Sleep eluded him at night, his mind replaying events long buried. Faced with mounting debts and a job that chipped away at his spirit, he turned inward. Even Raja's gentle nudges and comforting presence could not fully lift the creeping fog. In those dark moments, Amon would stand at the window of their 14th floor apartment and wonder if the ground below might offer a release from the relentless ache inside his chest. Yet each time, he found himself drawn back from the ledge by Raja's unwavering devotion, a cold nose against his hand, a soft whine that said, "I need you." This unspoken plea created an unshakable bond, binding them in a shared struggle between despair and the instinct to persevere. In the heart of that silent apartment, two souls learned to navigate the razor's edge between hope and hopelessness. In the hush of the city dawn, a dog's silent plea might be the only lifeline between a man and his gravest decision. Yet hope can flicker even in the darkest hours. The morning light filtered through thin curtains as Amon rose to the familiar rhythm of Raja's eager whines. It was in these early hours, before the world stirred fully to life, that the remnants of his past seemed most palpable. Memories unspooled in fragments, a childhood home filled with laughter, now silent. The sudden void left by his father's departure, raw as yesterday, and the cold absence of a mother's embrace, forever out of reach. Each recollection was a thread in the tapestry of his loneliness, a tapestry Raja's presence sought to unravel with gentle persistence. From the moment Amon rescued Raja, the canine's trust had been tentative. The dog's large amber eyes, once haunted by neglect, now flickered with cautious optimism. Amon remembered the day Raja first licked the tears from his cheeks, an unspoken promise of solidarity forged in mutual brokenness. Yet trust, once fractured, is not repaired overnight. In the beginning, Raja's tail wagged only when food arrived, and he flinched at sudden movements, his body tensed for imagined blows. It took weeks of steady care, measured words, and silent companionship for Raja to lean into Amon's touch, without hesitation, to rest his head on Amon's knee, as if weighing the cost of vulnerability. As their bond deepened, routine became their shared sanctuary. Each dawn began with a ritual. A man would tug on worn sneakers while Raja danced at the door, tail a metronome of anticipation. The pair traversed the city parks in companionable silence, the world slow to recognize the healing unfolding within. This duo. During the walks, Raj's keen nose led them along hidden paths, to the small grove of cherry trees that blossomed each spring, and to a quiet pond where koi fish flickered beneath lily pads. It was here that Eamon felt the first stirrings of Paisan, echo of childhood joys long buried in the apartment. The air held the faint scent of cedarwood and dog shampoo, reminders of Eamon's efforts to cleanse both the space and, by extension, his own troubled mind. Amid scattered dog toys and chewed slippers, Aman found purpose in the mundane, preparing Raj's meals with precise measurements, rotating the array of plush toys to keep them intriguing, and lining the balcony with potted plants to create a semblance of green. Each act of care was a brick in the foundation of Eamon's fragile hope, yet beneath this facade of normalcy, the machinery of adversity churned relentlessly. Work at the marketing firm had become a battleground of anxieties. Deadlines loomed like shadowy specters. Colleagues cast sideways glances at his withdrawn demeanor, and corporate hierarchy pressed in with indifferent weight. At night, his apartment transformed into a theater of angst reports replayed in his mind, punctuated by the relentless tick of a clock he could neither slow nor reset. He'd sit on the edge of his bed, Raja curled at his feet, and wonder if he was drifting further into a life scripted by external demands, a life stripped of meaning beyond survival. In those moments, Raja's gaze was a lifeline. The dog's eyes, reflecting a purity untouched by human duplicity, reminded Eamon of what it meant to belong, to trust, to hope. When flashbacks of happier times crashed over him, family vacations by the ocean, birthday candles glowing on a cactus, would lift his head, as if acknowledging the ache that accompanied nostalgia. Eamon would speak aloud, his voice a cracked whisper, "I'm trying, friend, I'm trying." And Raja would respond with a gentle whine, a vow of steadfast companionship that transcended words. Their relationship extended beyond the confines of the apartment. On weekends, Aman began volunteering at the same rural shelter where he had found Raja. He witnessed firsthand the direness of countless abandoned animals, each seeking the fragile redemption he had afforded Raja. There was Leela, a calico cat, whose mistrust manifested in sharp claws, and Bruno, a mastiff whose size masked a trembling heart. With each animal he helped, Aman felt his own wounds knit more tightly together. The shelter's corrugated fence bore witness to his transformation. A man once adrift had become a steward of hope, yet the shelter's environment was a stark reminder of the world's indifference. The cacophony of barking and meowing, the sight of injured paws and broken spirits, weighed heavily on Eamon. Raja, ever his barometer of emotion, would skulk beside him, ears low and eyes alert, attuned to Eamon's moods. On particularly difficult days, Raja would nudge Eamon's hand to offer solace, a gesture that reaffirmed the unspoken reciprocity between them. Financial strain hovered at the periphery of every thought. The cost of veterinary checkups for Rajiv, routine blood work, a minor leg sprain from a clumsy jump mounted alongside Eamon's mounting credit card bills. He often found himself calculating expenses late at night, trading off small luxuries, foregoing a concert ticket to cover an insurance premium, skipping a weekend brunch to refill Raja's prescription medication. The calculus of survival was relentless, and each trade-off carried an emotional toll: guilt for depriving himself of respite, fear for failing Raja as his caretaker. Amid these pressures, Eamon's inner voice became a whispering critic. It questioned his every action. Was he enough for Raja? Would the dog sense his faltering resolve? Could he truly escape the shadow of his past? In response, he constructed a fragile armor of routines: morning jogs with Raja, meticulous budgeting, nightly reflections in a worn journal. These rituals offered the illusion of control, a veneer that masked the chaos swirling within. Still, moments of profound connection shimmered through the haze. Eamon would recline on the balcony, Raja's warm body pressed against his side, as they watched the city lights blink awake. In those breaths, the world's clamor receded, and all that remained were the steady rhythms of two hearts finding resonance. At times, Eamon closed his eyes and imagined a future where he and Raja, scarred but unbroken, stood before a sunlit meadow, free from the burdens that now bound them. In his reverie, Raja bounded ahead with uncontainable joy, and Eamon felt the weight in his chest ease, if only for an instant. These instances of hope sustained Eamon, offering glimpses of a path forward, but the precariousness of his mental state meant darkness could return without warning. On some evenings, Raja's affectionate nudges were met with terse silence, his pleas for attention drowned out by a tide of despair. And in those moments, Eamon realized that love, as healing as it could be, was not a cruel. The demons of his past lay in wait, ready to seize any moment of vulnerability. As the days unfolded, Eamon understood that the bond he shared with Raja was both his salvation and his greatest vulnerability. In caring for the dog, he had discovered a purpose. Yet that same purpose pinned him to an existence fraught with obligation and fear. The duality of this realization set the stage for the trial that loomed, when the world's weight became unbearable. How far would he go to protect himself, and at what cost to the creature who had taught him to hope? In the quiet of shared rituals and whispered doubts, a delicate equilibrium is forged, one that can shatter in an instant, yet holds the promise of deeper redemption. Winter's first frost arrived with a cruel irony. As the city streets grew ice-laced and gray, the warmth between Eamon and Raja became a tender but tenuous shield against encroaching despair. The marketing firm's demands intensified, morphing into a litany of late nights and hollow accomplishments. Projects that once held promise now felt like Sisyphean tasks. Each presentation was a performance he felt unequipped to deliver. Each client meeting a journal entry in a script of weeks blurred into a continuum of exhaustion, and Eamon began to sense that the life he had constructed around Raja's needs was buckling under external pressures. It began with subtle changes in Raja's behavior. Once resilient, the dog now hesitated at doorways, as though anticipating that every outing might be their last. His playful bounds along the park paths slowed. He would pause atop small rises, nostrils flaring as if seeking assurance that Eamon was still beside him. Back in the apartment, Raja lingered by the door long after Eamon had returned, his ears pricked to phantom echoes of departure. In the hush of the 14th floor landing, Raja's whines cut through silence like a siren, an anxious plea stamping. Each return. Eamon noticed these signs but could not decipher their cause. His own mind was a labyrinth of anxieties, each corridor dark and narrow. At work, colleagues huddled in corner offices, their whispered critiques and stifled laughter a constant testament to his outsider status. His boss's congratulatory emails rang hollow, as though each well-done underscored the gulf between appearance and reality. At home, the apartment's walls seemed to close in. The hum of the city below took on a menacing tone, as though the world itself were pressing down. Financial threats compounded his stress. A surprise maintenance fee for the apartment's heating system arrived just as Raja's annual checkup revealed a minor heart murmur. The veterinarian's gentle tone belied the gravity of her words. "Monitor his activity closely," she advised, "and bring him in if you notice fatigue or irregular breathing." Eamon stored this warning in the recesses of his mind, a ticking clock counting down to an uncertain future. Yet denial became his refuge. He doubled Raja's exercise regimen, increasing morning runs through snow-dusted parklands and evening strolls along the river walkway. Raja's tongue lolled from his mouth in panting excitement. But Eamon saw only the glint of survival and affirmation of normalcy amidst a reality that seemed to crumble. One icy afternoon, Raja collapsed mid-stride. His hind legs buckled beneath him, and he lay motionless on the frozen ground as Eamon's heart seized in panic. He cradled the dog in his arms, breath fogging before their faces, as though the world had shrunk to the space between them. Sirens wailed distantly as Eamon sprinted across slick pavement, carrying Raja like a fragile relic, his livelihood at the mercy of a fragile body. In the emergency vet clinic, time fractured into numbing fragments. A parade of medical staff in green scrubs swirled around a gurney, and Raja's eyes wide, unblinking, brimming with trust locked onto Eamon's face. Each diagnostic procedure felt like a betrayal, each injection a reminder that life and death were suspended on a needle's tip. Hours passed, punctuated by the beeping of monitors and the hiss of oxygen tanks. Eamon hovered in a chair, hands clenched around Raja's leash, praying for a reprieve that seemed to drift just beyond his reach. When the veterinarian returned, her face bore the gravity of hard-won hope. "The murmur is manageable," she said, "but stress must be minimized. He needs rest, warmth, and a stable routine. Any abrupt change could trigger complications." She offered a treatment plan and a caution: "Don't push him beyond his limits." Walking back to the apartment in the stillness of night, Eamon felt a chasm open within him. He had sought to shield Raja from his own turmoil, but now the dog's mortality stood as an unyielding testament to their shared vulnerability. The city lights seemed to flicker with a mocking indifference. What value did hope hold if it could be so easily threatened? In the days that followed, Eamon tried to create a cocoon of safety around Raja. He eschewed long walks for short, measured strolls and outfitted the apartment with heated pads and extra blankets. He pored over veterinary articles, obsessively monitoring Raja's breaths, weight, and energy. Yet each precaution carried its own price. Raja grew restless, pacing the apartment in restless loops, his gaze drifting toward the balcony's edge, as if remembering freer days. Aemon found himself torn between protecting Raja's fragile health and honoring the dog's spirit for exploration and play. This tension, a crucible of care and constraint, mirrored Aemon's internal battle. He recognized, in Raja's pacing, the reflection of his own restlessness, need to break free from perceived cages. His inner critic, once content to lurk in shadows, now demanded action. He must secure a promotion or find a higher-paying job. He must restore his finances. He must prove himself worthy of Raja's unconditional trust. Each aspiration loomed like a mountain, and failure would not be an option. Isolation deepened as Aemon withdrew from friends and colleagues. He declined invitations, citing exhaustion. He stopped returning calls, claiming overwhelming deadlines. The apartment's windows became screens to a world he no longer recognized, people moving beyond an invisible barrier. Raja, attuned to this withdrawal, would press himself against the glass, as though sensing Aemon's invisible chains. Late one night, Aemon discovered Raja perched on the balcony, gazing over the edge with an intensity that froze his blood. The city lights below flickered like distant stars, and the height stretched infinitely. Raja's stance was elegant yet precarious, each inhalation slow and deliberate. Panic constricted Aemon's throat, yet in that moment, he felt the first flicker of an idea so dark that its mere acknowledgement felt like betrayal. He reached out, his hand trembling, and Raja turned, eyes wide with shock. Aemon whispered, as though testing the words in the air, "Maybe it's time to end this." Raja's ears flattened, and he backed away, tail tucked in fear. Aemon's heart thundered not from the height, but from the gravity of his own thought. The darkness had edged closer than it ever had before, threatening to consume both of them. When love's nurturing embrace collides with icy desperation, a single moment can tip the balance between salvation and tragedy. The dawn broke still against the horizon, painting Aemon's apartment in muted tones that mirrored his inner landscape. In the hush of morning, he sat alone on the edge of the sofa. Raja curled tightly beside him, breathing in a rhythm both reassuring and fragile. For the first time, Aemon confronted the breadth of his own psychological terrain. Realizing that his relationship with Raja, bond forged in shared vulnerability, had become both the salve for his wounds and a mirror highlighting his deepest insecurities. Aemon's thoughts drifted to memories he had long suppressed, the laughter of childhood summer nights, the scent of his mother's perfume in the kitchen, the echo of his father's voice reading bedtime stories. Those recollections, once a source of comfort, now carried an undercurrent of loss so profound that they threatened to suffocate him. Each memory was a double-edged sword, reminding him of love received and love irrevocably gone. In Raja, he had discovered a new conduit for affection. Yet even that connection trembled under the weight of his unspoken fears. As Aemon sipped bitter coffee, he observed Raja's gentle nudges on invitation to bridge the chasm between his mind and his heart. He reached down, stroking the golden fur with deliberate slowness, as though seeking to imprint a sense of safety within both of them. Raja's eyes closed at the touch, a small exhalation escaping in a contented sigh, and Aemon felt a warmth bloom in his chest. But this warmth carried its own burden. The responsibility of ensuring Raja's trust would never be betrayed. His mind wandered to the day he first rescued the dog, recalling the hollow stare that greeted him in the shelter's pen. At that moment, he had seen in Raja a reflection of his own emptiness. Now, months later, that reflection was clearer and more complex. Raja's dependence on him for love, security, and life itself had woven their fates together. Yet beneath raw affection, Aemon's psychological scars, lurked fear of abandonment, dread of failure, the echo of voices that labeled him unworthy. Internal monologues surged forward in the form of questions. Was he truly capable of protecting Raja? Could he bear the guilt of losing him, whether through illness or an impulsive act born of despair? Each thought was a tremor in his psyche, threatening to unbalance the fragile equilibrium he had fought to maintain. He recognized that his protective instincts, once life-affirming, had grown compulsive, a mechanism to stave off the terror of loss. Late that morning, he attempted to journal his thoughts, hoping that words on paper might exorcise some of the darkness. Yet the pen trembled in his hand as sentences came out jagged. "I am afraid." So afraid before dissolving into illegible scrawls. Frustrated, He crumpled the page and watched Raja paw at a stray corner, sniffing the discarded sheet as if to offer reassurance. In that act, Eamon realized that Raja had become his emotional anchor, sensitive to his moods in a way no human had ever been. As afternoon light filtered through the windows, Eamon surrendered to reflection. He closed his eyes and let memories wash over him, the ache of past betrayals mingling with the softness of Raja's fur against his side. He allowed himself to feel every pang, the sting of his father's departure, the hollowness of a solitary upbringing, and the raw grief he had carried through adulthood. In acknowledging these wounds, he felt a flicker of compassion for himself, a recognition that his pain, while formidable, did not define his entire existence. That evening, he spoke to Raja in a hushed voice, recounting fragments of his past, with a vulnerability he had never shown another living being. He told Raja about the house that became empty, the nights spent staring at the ceiling, and the moments when hope felt like a luxury he could no longer afford. Raja sat attentively, head tilted as though absorbing each word, his eyes reflecting a purity unmarred by judgment. In this confession, Eamon felt both exposed and liberated, as though naming his demons lessened their power. Emotional flashbacks surfaced unbidden. The night he learned of his mother's final illness, the cold hardness of the hospital corridor, and the silent scream that rattled his bones when her hand slipped from his grasp. Each memory was interwoven with a fragile thread of connection to Raja, who now filled the void his parents left behind. Yet Eamon understood that projecting his healing onto the dog placed an impossible burden on a creature whose capacity for love was boundless but whose life was fearfully finite. Tense psychological tension coalesced into a decision. He must seek help beyond the walls of his apartment. The next morning, he made his way to a therapist's office, a modest suite bathed in soft light and furnished with comfortable chairs. There, he encountered the unfamiliar terrain of professional introspection, guided by a clinician's gentle questions. He spoke of Raja, of the solace the dog provided, and of the weight that pressed down upon his chest like an invisible fist. Through therapy, Eamon began to untangle the knots of his psyche. He learned to differentiate between his own existential despair and the genuine needs of his companion. He discovered coping strategies, mindfulness exercises to calm his spiraling thoughts, breathing techniques to ground him during panic, and journaling prompts to explore the roots of his insecurities. Raja remained by his side throughout this process, a creature of pure presence who embodied the therapeutic principle of unconditional positive regard. Back at the apartment, Eamon instituted routines that honored both their needs. He set aside time for mental health breaks, periods of stillness, where Raja and he would simply exist together without expectation. He arranged more frequent, shorter walks, balancing Raja's physical health with the dog's innate curiosity for exploration. Their meals became a shared ritual. Eamon prepared his own food with care, mindful of nourishment for both body and soul. As Raja waited patiently at his side, tail wagging like a metronome of hope. In these moments of mutual attunement, Eamon experienced an emotional resonance deeper than companionship. He recognized that Raja's simple act of being unconditional, non-judgmental was a testament to the healing power of empathy. Each time Raja rested his head on Eamon's lap, Eamon felt a transmission of trust so profound that it washed away the residue of his darkest thoughts. By the time night fell, Eamon had woven together a new narrative, one that acknowledged pain without allowing it free rein. He understood that the dog's life and his own were irrevocably intertwined, but he no longer viewed Raja as a lifeline in a sea of despair. Instead, Raja had become a companion in the journey toward wholeness, an emblem of resilience rather than a vessel for Eamon's unmet needs. He closed the day with a whispered affirmation, fingers brushing Raja's ears. "We will face tomorrow together, friend." Not as savior and saved, but as equals, bound by love and growth. Raja's eyes, reflecting the soft glow of the bedside lamp, conveyed an unspoken yes, a promise that transcended words and bore the weight of genuine connection. In the crucible of confession and compassion, two souls learn that true healing emerges not from dependence, but from shared vulnerability and growth. The morning of the incident began like any other winter's dawn. Pale light filtered through frost-kissed windows as Eamon and Raja prepared for their routine walk. Yet beneath the veneer of normalcy, a storm raged within Eamon's mind, gathering momentum with every step. The world outside seemed inconsequential. Traffic hummed, birds fluttered in the courtyard below, but inside Eamon's chest, heartbeats pounded like thunder, each pulse a reminder of failures he could neither escape nor mend. They reached the balcony at precisely 7:32 a.m., a place Aman seldom visited because of the vertiginous drop to the street below. Raja stood expectantly, tail wagging, nose twitching at the crisp air. Aman gripped the metal railing, knuckles white, as memories of past betrayals and future uncertainties collided within him. In that moment, the balcony became more than a vantage point. It was an altar upon which Aman's darkest thoughts sought sacrifice. Raja's innocent gaze lifted to Aman's eyes, reflecting undimmed trust. The dog had no inkling of the tempest consuming his companion. He only knew that Aman's scent was the axis upon which his world turned. Raja's tail flicked with anticipation, urging Aman toward play, but Aman could barely register the motion. A knot of desperation tightened in his gut, and a single, fateful impulse took shape. The belief that ending Raja's life might somehow unburden him from his own. For a breathless moment, time seemed to splinter. Aman's vision tunneled around the railing's edge, height stretching infinitely downward. The city's pulse receded into a distant echo, replaced by the roaring silence that precedes calamity. He felt as though suspended between two realms, one where hope was still possible, and one where release lay in the unfathomable drop. Raja shifted, sensing a change in atmosphere. His head cocked, ears pricked, as though trying to decipher the discordant emotions radiating from Aman. In that instant, a flash of childhood memory pierced the fog. His mother's voice, soft and insistent, imploring him to trust when he felt most alone. But the memory flickered and waned, unable to overpower the crescendo of despair. Then impulsively, Aman grasped Raja by the scruff and hefted him above the railing. The dog's eyes widened in shock, incomprehension mingling with fear. For the briefest of seconds, he dangled in the gray sky, a golden blur against concrete and clouds. Raja's legs kicked instinctively, paws skimming the air. As he looked back at Aman, silent plea etched in every sinew. Aman's heart lurched, his hand trembling. He saw the abyss yawning below, the asphalt far, far beneath. And with a swift, irreversible motion, he released his grip. Raja plunged downward, a silent arc of desperation, the dog's form growing smaller against the cityscape. Time dilated. In that suspended heartbeat, Aman felt the full weight of his action, a collapse of every promise he had ever made. Down, down. The fall continued in agonizing few seconds marked by the wind's howl and Raja's fading silhouette. At the last possible instant, a nylon strap looped around Raja's harness caught on the balcony's edge, jerking the dog back into mid-swing. Raja's body arced upward, paws scrabbling against the air, until momentum reversed his descent. He landed back on the balcony floor with a thud, his hindquarters skidding dangerously close to the railing's brink. Aman screamed, rushing forward as Raja collapsed onto the cold concrete, breath ragged and eyes unfocused. He crouched beside the dog, hands trembling as he cradled Raja's limp body. Blood darkened the fur at his flank, and each of Raja's inhalations came as a labored gasp. Aman's own breath shattered into sobs as he pressed his face into the dog's warm coat, memorizing the living heartbeat that had nearly been lost. Somewhere below, the city awoke to the echo of sirens, neighbors calling for help. Drawn by the sound of Raja's final, ragged breaths, Aman's mind fractured between relief and horror. The act was over, but its echo would linger in every waking moment. He turned upward, voice cracking, pleading with an indifferent sky. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, my friend. Forgive me." Paramedics arrived within minutes, lifting Raja onto a stretcher with gentle urgency. Aman followed, hands stained and heart splintered, as they carried the dog to the idling ambulance. In the confined space of the vehicle, Raja's head lolled against Aman's shoulder, eyes half closed but alive. Aman wrapped an arm around him, tears wetting Raja's ears. As the ambulance doors closed on the scene of despair, en route to the veterinary trauma unit, an attendant whispered to Aman, "He's alive, but critical. We'll do everything we can. Stay by his side." As the ambulance weaved through city streets, Raja's shallow breaths became a fragile thread of hope. In the siren's wail, Aman heard a paradox, the sound of rescue intertwined with the lament of irreversible guilt. When the ambulance doors parted in the hospital bay, Aman carried Raja into a world of stark lights and sterile smells. Doctors and nurses moved swiftly, tendrils of compassion guiding their actions as they whisked Raja into an operating room. Aman lingered at the threshold, hands clasped in silent prayer. As the dog was swept away, life suspended on a scalpel's edge. Left alone in the waiting area, Aman sank into a plastic chair, rocked by sobs so intense they racked his entire frame. The enormity of what he had done, an act born of despair, not malice, descended upon him like an avalanche. Each sob was an admission of guilt, each breath a claim on forgiveness he feared would never come. Outside, the city moved on, traffic streaming and birds gliding over rooftops. But inside Ayman's chest, the only movement was the thrum of fear. He clenched Raja's leash, gripped white-knuckled, as he waited for news. In that sterile corridor, the boundaries between life and death, hope and despair, salvation and ruin, had collapsed. Have you ever experienced an animal's unspoken love in your darkest hour? Share your moment of connection in the comments below. In the aftermath of a single irrevocable choice, two lives hang in the balance, one pleading for redemption, the other demanding unwavering devotion. Moments after Raja was carried into the operating theater, the waiting room's fluorescent lights seemed to hum with suspended tension. Ayman remained seated, shoulders hunched, eyes fixed on the closed double doors. Around him, the murmur of staff and distant beeps of monitors formed a backdrop of urgent hope. Though Raja's body lay on a table beyond reach, his spirit hovered in Ayman's mind like an unfinished thread, waiting to be woven back into life. Time blurred into a series of fractured minutes. Ayman replayed the fall in his mind, the weightlessness, the terror, the sudden catch that had spared Raja from a fatal plummet. Each memory flickered with vivid clarity, aligning his guilt with the dog's battered body. He thought of their shared walks, now forever split into before and after, and the simple joy of Raja's wet nose nudging his hand. In those recollections, Ayman found both agony and a sliver of solace. The knowledge that Raja's resilience had guided him from the brink. A hospital assistant offered Ayman a cup of lukewarm water, but he could only manage shallow sips as he wrestled with the enormity of his actions. He tried to remain present, each footstep echoing down the hall. Each distant voice, a reminder of lives continuing beyond this crisis. Yet his thoughts remained tethered to the operating room. Was Raja responding to anesthesia? Would the fractures heal? Could the heart murmur survive such trauma? An hour passed before a veterinarian emerged, scrub cap still in place, eyes reflecting both fatigue and compassion. "He's stable," she announced gently. "We had to set a minor fracture in his right hip and address some bruising along his ribs. But everything else looks promising. The harness saved him from worse injuries. He's in recovery now. You can see him soon." Aman exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he'd held. "Thank you," he whispered, voice cracking. "Thank you so much." Guided by a nurse, Ayman entered the recovery ward, a quiet enclave of soft beds and hushed tones. There, under a pale blanket, Raja lay still, eyes half open, his golden fur matted with antiseptic. His chest rose and fell in measured breaths, each one a testament to survival. Aman knelt beside him, brushing stray hairs from Raja's forehead, marveling at the fragility of life and the unspoken bond that had carried them through. Raja's gaze flickered to Aman, and for a heartbeat, the dog's eyes met his. In that gaze, Ayman found both an apology and a forgiveness beyond words. He spoke in a hoarse whisper. "I'm here, friend. I won't leave you again. I promise you that." In the hours that followed, Aman remained by Raja's side. He called his closest friend Samira, whose startled voice offered both questions and comfort. She arrived, clutching a thermos of herbal tea and a small pouch of Raja's favorite treats. Together, they watched as Raja's ears twitched at every sound: footsteps in the corridor, the hum of the ventilation system, Samira's soft laughter, as she coaxed him to nibble on a chicken-flavored biscuit. As evening descended, Raja stirred, lifting his head with surprising strength. His tail gave a faint wag, and Ayman felt a surge of hope, so intense it brought tears to his eyes. "Look at you," he murmured, stroking Raja's chin. "You're a warrior." Samira placed a comforting hand on Ayman's shoulder. "He's going to be okay. You did everything you could." In the quiet lull, Aman reflected on the thin line that separated their lives. Raja's near-death had drawn a stark boundary between past and future. The apartment balcony, once a site of despair, had become a crucible where hope had nearly been extinguished in, then rekindled by a miraculous catch. Now, in this sterile ward, Ayman understood that recovery would be both physical and emotional. That night Raja was transferred to a private room for observation. Ayman settled into a stiff chair beside the bed, cradling Raja's paw as the dog drifted into a restless sleep. In the dim glow of the bedside lamp, Ayman whispered promises of play in spring meadows, of unbroken routines and soft blankets by the fire. Each vow was an affirmation of his commitment to repair what had been broken within Raja's body and within himself. As Aemon closed his eyes, exhaustion claimed him, but even in dreams he remained tethered to Raja's presence. He dreamt of a sunlit meadow where Raja bounded freely, unencumbered by fractures or fear. The dog's joyous bark echoed across fields of wildflowers, a clarion call to live fully in the face of adversity. Dawn found Aemon awake before the hospital staff. Raja lay beside him, his breathing steady, eyes bright with recognition. In that moment, Aemon felt the first flush of gratitude. That was not overshadowed by guilt. He realized that the fall had become a catalyzing event, one that would redefine their bond and set them on a path of mutual healing. In the uneasy calm that follows trauma, the fragile threads of survival offer both a mirror of past choices and a promise of renewed hope. Though Raja's immediate survival was nothing short of miraculous, the road to recovery proved to be strewn with obstacles that threatened to unravel both dog and man anew. Within days of his discharge from the veterinary hospital, Raja's progress appeared to plateau. The fracture in his hip, while set correctly, remained painful. Each tentative step drew a wince, a reminder of gravity's relentless pull. Meanwhile, the bruises along his ribs deepened in color, and Raja's once vibrant spirit seemed subdued. His joyful bounds replaced by measured, cautious movements. Aemon watched these changes with a simmering mix of guilt and determination. He had promised to protect Raja, yet his own actions had nearly annihilated the very soul he pledged to care for. The weight of that paradox pressed upon him, manifesting in night sweats and tremors that left his limbs shaky and his mind restless. He found himself questioning every measure of care. Was the prescribed pain medication adequate? Were the compression bandages too tight? Did Raja's reluctance to play signal lingering fear rather than discomfort? Financial pressures, once held at bay by the adrenaline of crisis, resurfaced with cruel precision. Medical bills from the emergency intervention and surgery arrived in thick envelopes, each statement a testament to the cost of a single moment's despair. Aemon, furloughed unexpectedly when his firm downsized in the wake of a larger corporate merger, faced the prospect of unemployment. His savings, already strained by routine veterinary expenses, dwindled alarmingly as he directed every possible dollar toward Raja's treatments and therapies. As his finances crumbled, Aemon's social world contracted further. Samira, initially a steadfast presence in the hospital ward, began to withdraw her visits under the pretext of her own mounting responsibilities. Colleagues, once aware of Raja's rescue story and supportive, slid back into polite distance, uncomfortable with the raw display of emotion that followed Aemon like a shadow. The apartment's walls closed in again, no longer sanctuaries but silent witnesses to a man's unraveling. To compound the turmoil, the city's animal welfare authorities initiated an investigation into the fall. A concerned neighbor, having witnessed emergency crews on the balcony, had reported a suspected case of animal cruelty. Aemon received a formal notice, an inquiry into his fitness as a pet owner, with potential legal ramifications including charges, fines, or removal of Raja from his care. The notice laminated his fear with a new edge: fear for Raja's physical recovery, matched by fear for his legal future. The bureaucratic process was merciless in its procedural coldness. Investigators questioned Aemon's account of events, poring over witness statements that varied in detail. Some claimed to see Raja slip from Aemon's grasp. Others alleged a malicious throw. Aemon's own recollections, clouded by panic and guilt, wavered as he repeated the narrative in different forums. The more he spoke, the more the truth felt like a foreign artifact, shiny and jagged, dangerous to hold in unprotected hands. Each hearing, held in a dimly lit municipal office, became a crucible of public scrutiny. Behind a polished oak desk, a white-haired magistrate peered at Aemon over silver-rimmed glasses, her expression impassive as she reviewed evidence. Aemon felt exposed, as though every sin of his past had been laid bare for judgment. Raja, destined for more veterinary follow-ups, remained under the care of a trusted friend during these sessions, another blow to Aemon's confidence in his ability to keep his companion safe. In these moments of isolation, Aemon's psychological wounds reopened. Nightmares returned. Visions of Raja's fall replayed on loop, his body collapsing through space as Aemon stood paralyzed by indecision. Each dream ended in an agonized howl that woke Aemon from restless slumber, heart pounding, and palms slick with sweat. By day, he struggled to maintain a facade of composure, but inside, a storm brewed that threatened to exceed the fury of his initial breakdown. Yet even in this maelstrom, faint beacons of support glimmered. The veterinarian who had saved Raja's life reached out with words of encouragement, offering a payment plan and discounted physiotherapy sessions for recuperation. A small online community of rescue story advocates, inspired by Raja's survival tale, mobilized to raise funds for Ayman's mounting bills. Messages poured in. Stay strong, we believe in you, may Raja recover swiftly. These acts of kindness carved channels of light through the darkness. Ayman clung to these gestures as proof that compassion could outlast catastrophe. Each email, each donation, became a scaffold supporting his resolve. He poured energy into Raja's rehabilitation, conducting gentle range of motion exercises and consulting canine hydrotherapy specialists. Raja responded in kind, a tentative tail wag here, a brief flourish of his head there, as though sensing that Ayman's faith in him was the force guiding his own recovery. Still, the legal inquiry loomed large, a specter that threatened to undo the fragile progress both had made. Ayman summoned courage for the final hearing, clutching a portfolio of medical reports, witness testimonies, and character references. As he waited to face the magistrate again, Raja's injury seemed minor, in comparison to the damage done to Ayman's spirit. Yet in Raja's eyes, when they met that morning across the balcony, Ayman saw not reproach, but unwavering trust. A reflection of forgiveness that transcended words. When adversity multiplies, compassion can still surface, binding human and animal in a shared fight for justice and healing. The morning of the final hearing arrived with a brittle clarity. The sky washed in pale blue as though oblivious to the storm about to break. Ayman stood before the courthouse steps, Raja's empty leash dangling from his hand, a silent testament to the journey that had brought them here. Each footstep up the stone stairway felt laden with consequence. With every stride, Ayman could almost hear the echoes of past moments, Raja's joyful bark on their first walk, the scraping thud at the balcony's edge, and the rapid beeping of monitors in the recovery ward. Inside the courtroom, the air was hushed, punctuated only by the rustle of papers and the occasional cough from the audience. Ayman's heart pounded, as the magistrate, seated atop an elevated dais, called the session to order. She invited both prosecution and defense to present their final arguments. The prosecutor, a stern figure in crisp attire, spoke with measured detachment. This case hinges on whether the defendant's actions constituted cruelty or an act of desperation. The law protects animals from intentional harm, and we must consider whether Mr. Ayman's negligence surpassed the threshold of a tragic error. Ayman's attorney, a woman whose calm demeanor belied the weight of the moment, stood and outlined the mitigating factors. Ayman's documented history of rescue work, Raja's rescuing of Ayman from his own despair, and the dog's miraculous survival. She spoke of Raja's heart murmur and Ayman's overwhelming fear that the dog's condition might deteriorate at any moment. Each point was punctuated by medical records, statements from neighbors who attested to Ayman's compassionate character, and testimonials from the shelter volunteers who had witnessed Ayman's devotion. As these narratives unfolded, Ayman's gaze drifted to the gallery. There, Samira sat with tears brimming in her eyes, clutching a small photograph of Raja in happier times. The veterinarian sat beside a group of rescue advocates, their signs reading "Pardon the man who saved us all," and "Justice with compassion." Each face in the crowd embodied a shard of hope, evidence that their story had resonated far beyond the walls of the apartment. When his attorney concluded, the magistrate turned her attention to Aman. He rose, knees unsteady, voice wavering. As he spoke, "Your Honor, I stand before you not to justify what I did, for I know it was wrong. I acted out of fear that Raja's health would collapse under the weight of his conditions, fear that I would fail him as I felt I had failed everyone else in my life. But in that moment, I saw only the end, not the possibility of continued hope. Raja is more than a dog to me. He is my conscience, my healer. Without him, I would have no reason to keep fighting." His words trembled with authenticity, a raw confession that echoed through the chamber. Silence followed as Raja's destiny hung in the balance. Then the magistrate spoke, her tone measured but not unkind. "The court recognizes the gravity of the defendant's remorse and the extraordinary outcome of the incident, the survival and ongoing recovery of Raja. It is clear Mr. Ayman's actions, though misguided, were not born of malice but of despair. Therefore, the court orders a conditional pardon, under the stipulation that Mr. Ayman completes a mandatory animal care course and maintains regular veterinary checkups for Raja." A gasp rippled through the courtroom, followed by a ripple of relief and applause from the gallery. Samira rushed forward, embracing Ayman as tears flowed freely. The veterinarian approached, offering a proud smile and a pat on the back. In that moment, Eamon felt both the weight and release of judgment and affirmation that redemption is possible even after the darkest transgression. Outside the courthouse, sunlight warmed Eamon's face as he slipped Raja's favorite leash back into his hand. Raja, now fully healed, greeted Eamon with an exuberant bark and a wagging tail. Oblivious to the legal complexities that had once threatened his life, as they walked down the courthouse steps, their silhouettes cast long shadows to survivors bound by a story of despair, hope, and the transformative power of love. At the cusp of judgment, compassion bridges the chasm between condemnation and redemption, illuminating a path for two souls to step into the light together. In the days following the conditional pardon, life resumed a wary normalcy. Eamon and Raja returned to their 14th-floor apartment, its walls now imbued with the quiet hum of recovery rather than the weight of imminent despair. Light filtered through the curtains at dawn, no longer a harbinger of dread but a gentle reminder of another day granted. Raja, once tentative with steps, now moved with measured confidence. Eager to resume the routines that tethered their bond. Their mornings began with soft sunlight, and the ritual of measured exercises prescribed by the canine physiotherapist. Raja's right hip had healed sufficiently to allow gentle stretches, slow, deliberate movements that spoke of resilience and trust. Eamon guided each motion with care, his fingertips grazing fur as he counted each breath in harmony with the dog's steady exhale. In these moments, they communicated without words, a shared dialogue of healing that transcended the trauma of the fall and the sterile chill of hospital corridors. The legal stipulations of the conditional pardon required Eamon to enroll in an accredited animal care course. He attended weekly classes at a local community center, where experienced trainers lead sessions on canine behavior, emergency first aid, and environmental enrichment. At first, the assignments felt like a punitive measure, a bureaucratic tick box, to satisfy probationary terms. Yet as Eamon immersed himself in the curriculum, he discovered a renewed appreciation for the depth of a dog's needs, mental stimulation, social interaction, and the importance of safe spaces that honored both freedom and security. On weekends, Eamon and Raja ventured beyond the city's concrete arteries to a dog-friendly park nestled beneath the hills. There, Raja greeted the open expanse with a jubilant bark, sprinting across dewy grass as Eamon looked on with a bittersweet smile. The dog's exuberance was tempered by careful observation. Eamon's hand maintained a gentle grip on the leash, ready to rein in overly ambitious sprints. Each successful lap around the oval track became a small victory, a testament to both Raja's physical fortitude and the psychological healing that now permeated their relationship. At home, the apartment evolved into a sanctuary of recovery. Eamon rearranged furniture to provide clear pathways for Raja's rehabilitation, removed any trip hazards, and installed a soft low-profile ramp leading to the balcony that once loomed as a site of tragedy. Flowering plants replaced potted succulents, chosen not only for their aesthetic appeal but for their non-toxicity and the tactile enrichment they offered. Raja's corner received special attention, cushioned bedding, interactive puzzle feeders, and a rotating selection of toys designed to engage his mind without risking physical strain. These tangible changes reflected subtler shifts in Eamon's psyche. No longer did he approach each day with the suffocating dread that had once threatened to crush him. Instead, he woke with a sense of purpose, determined to honor the second chance life had granted them both. He maintained his journal, not with entries of anguish, but with reflections on progress. Raja's tentative first gallop. A peaceful night slept through soundly, the satisfaction of successfully navigating a new walking route without incident. Community outreach became another pillar of Eamon's newfound resilience. He volunteered at the same rural shelter where he and Raja's journey began, this time leading seminars on animal welfare and the human impact of pet ownership. His story of a man on the brink, saved by a dog whose survival became their shared redemption, resonated with audiences, young and old. Listeners leaned forward as Eamon described how Raja's unconditional presence had compelled him to seek help, to confront his own darkness, and to emerge with renewed empathy. Social media posts chronicling their progress garnered supportive messages from around the globe. Photographs captured Raja's triumphant return to play mid-leap, ears flapping in the breeze, tongue lolling in unrestrained joy. Comments streamed in. "So happy to see Raja thriving. Your story saved my own family pet. Thank you for speaking honestly about mental health and the human-animal bond." Each message reaffirmed the ripple effect of one life saved and its capacity to inspire countless others. Yet the shadow of the fall remained a cautionary echo. On the anniversary of that fateful day, Aemon found himself standing at the edge of the balcony, leash in hand, memories coiling like specters in the wind. Raja, sensing the gravity, sat beside him, head tilted as though offering silent counsel. Aemon breathed deeply, feeling the mingled currents of pain and gratitude. He spoke softly. "We've come far, my friend, but I know we must never forget." Raja responded with a gentle nuzzle, anchoring Aemon to the present in the quiet aftermath of their shared trials. Aemon and Raja discovered a truth that transcended legal absolution and physical healing, that redemption is neither a singular event, nor a destination, but an ongoing commitment to compassion. Each day, they walked a path defined not by the shadows of past transgressions, but by the light of mutual understanding and the unwavering promise to face whatever lay ahead. Together. As life resumes its gentle rhythms, the true measure of healing emerges through ongoing acts of devotion and the courage to embrace each new dawn with compassion. In the quiet glow of evening light, Aemon and Raja stand together on the apartment balcony, no longer a battleground of desperation, but a vantage point of shared resilience. Their journey has woven threads of despair and hope into a tapestry that speaks to the transformative power of empathy. Raja's once fractured body now thrives in motion. His exuberant barks echoed the unbreakable spirit that carried him through the fall. Aemon's heart, once hollowed by sorrow, beats with a steady conviction that bonds forged in vulnerability can become sources of profound strength. They have traversed a landscape few pairs of souls ever know. From the dark chasm of Aemon's despair to the sterile lights of the trauma ward, each step revealed how love when tested by crisis can transcend fear. Raja's survival was itself a testament to the fragile miracle that occurs when one being refuses to surrender to fate. Yet their story did not end with a single breath saved. It continues in every measured step. Aemon guides his companion through every gentle word he offers when Raja's confidence wavers, and every new dawn they greet side by side. At the heart of their narrative lies a universal lesson, that redemption is not a gift bestowed upon the worthy, but a journey walked by those brave enough to seek forgiveness and growth. Aemon's decision before the fall, though born of a fleeting darkness, became a catalyst for both souls to confront pain and emerge transformed. The criminal inquiry and conditional pardon further underscored society's capacity to balance justice with compassion, reminding us that mercy can pave the way for renewed purpose. For viewers, the tale of Aemon and Raja offers more than a spectacle of survival. It serves as a mirror reflecting our own struggles. How often do we stand on our own balconies of despair, weighing regret against the fear of moving forward? And how might we, like Aemon, find in another's presence the motivation to seek help, to reframe our darkest impulses into a testament of resilience? Whether through animals, friends, or acts of service, the connections we forge can anchor us when the wind of doubt howls fiercest. Aemon's ongoing work with animal shelters and community outreach illuminates the ripple effect of one transformative bond. Each seminar he leads, each story he shares, becomes a seed of hope planted in hearts yearning for redemption. Raja, ever the silent ambassador of unconditional love, greets new faces with gentle curiosity, living testament to the healing that blossoms when we extend trust even after trauma. As the final scene fades, imagine Aemon tucking Raja into his corner of the apartment, soft blankets, puzzle toys set aside for tomorrow's play, and a journal entry awaiting the next chapter. In the hush, you sense the unspoken vow between them, to walk forward, together, through whatever storms may come. Their journey does not promise an absence of hardship, but a bond resilient enough to weather each storm. Look into your own life and consider who or what has acted as your Raja, an unwavering presence pulling you back from the brink, and how can you, like Aemon, honor that gift by nurturing the bonds that sustain you? In the end, what happens next depends on the choices of our hearts and the courage to answer compassion's call. In the final stillness, two hearts stand as a testament. Redemption unfolds not in absolution, but in the daily acts of love that propel us toward tomorrow.